Israel and Hamas are officially in a truce today, but skirmishes between the two sides are still breaking out. The U.S. Secretary of State says he plans to meet with leaders on both sides following the ceasefire. President Biden's COVID relief program based on race now temporarily blocked. A judge siding with a plaintiff who lost over $100,000 in profits due to the pandemic. He is suing on the grounds of racial discrimination. And a federal judge is upholding a Biden administration rule barring schools from maintaining separate bathrooms and showers for male and female students. The one suing is a Christian college, saying the ruling forces the school to act against its beliefs. Tune into Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. Before we get into today's main topics, let's do an update on the Israel situation. Israel and Hamas are officially in a truce today, but skirmishes between the two sides are still breaking out. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken plans to meet Israeli and Palestinian leaders to discuss recovery efforts following the ceasefire. He tweeted he will be traveling to the region in the coming days. The news comes after Israel and the Hamas terrorist group agreed to a ceasefire Thursday, ending an 11-day conflict. Egypt mediated the truce, which took effect early Friday morning. Israel's Security Cabinet voted unanimously in favor of a mutual and unconditional truce proposed by Egypt. Israel says that Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists have fired over 4,000 rockets towards Israel, but many of the rockets fall short, landing in Gaza. Since the fighting began on May 10th, health officials in Gaza say 232 Palestinians have been killed and more than 1,900 wounded. On the Israeli side, authorities reported 12 dead and hundreds have been treated for injuries in the rocket attacks. Following the truce, President Biden pledged to provide support to Israelis and Palestinians. As for Israel, he mentioned the Iron Dome system, which helped destroy Hamas rockets fired into the Jewish nation. He reiterated that the U.S. supports Israel's right to defend itself against terrorist groups. Biden also said the U.S. will help provide humanitarian relief for the people of Gaza and assist in reconstruction efforts. Now, as for Israel, Palestinians in Gaza took to the streets early Friday morning to celebrate the ceasefire, and Palestinians in East Jerusalem gathered at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But Israelis in Tel Aviv expressed mixed feelings. One resident supports the ceasefire but says it doesn't solve the fundamental problem. Another resident said he thinks Israel's defense forces should have hit the terrorists even more. Now, let's turn to topics sparking controversy. Biden's COVID relief program based on race, now temporarily blocked. U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor blocked the Biden administration from prioritizing awarding the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. That offers relief to restaurants hard hit by the pandemic, but it's based on applicants' race or gender. The plaintiff is the owner of Greer's Ranch Cafe in Texas, Philip Greer. He sued the Small Business Association last week on the grounds of racial discrimination. And the judge agreed, ruling that the plaintiff, Greer, is likely to succeed, and he granted a request for a temporary restraining order. Judge O'Connor is a George W. Bush nominee. So Section 5003 of the American Rescue Plan Act requires the agency, or SBA, prioritize women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged business owners applying. That's for those applying to receive a portion of the nearly $30 billion set aside to create the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. So who falls under the socially disadvantaged group? According to the Small Business Administration regulators, socially disadvantaged individuals are those who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias within American society because of their identities as members of groups and without regard to their individual qualities. The social disadvantage must stem from circumstances beyond their control. So what about the economically disadvantaged ones? Those are considered to be those whose ability to compete in the free enterprise system has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit opportunities, as compared to others in the same or similar line of business who are not socially disadvantaged. So back to this case, the judge ruled that based on the record, Greer is able and ready to apply, adding he would be eligible if it weren't for this, quote, allegedly unconstitutional prioritization scheme. He went on to say the context is clear, saying there is enough evidence that Greer's restaurant lost nearly $100,000 during the pandemic, and that he is applying for the grant with a, quote, specific goal of supporting restaurants during the pandemic. Representing Greer are America First Legal and Texas Public Policy Foundation. They argue that the Small Business Administration lurches America dangerously backward, reversing the clock on American progress and violating our most sacred and revered principles by actively and invidiously discriminating against American citizens, solely based upon their race and sex. They go on to say this is illegal, it is unconstitutional, it is wrong, and it must stop. AFL President and former Trump advisor Stephen Meier also weighed in on the matter, calling Biden's decision to determine eligibility based on race, quote, profoundly illegal and morally outrageous. He went on to say it is an affront to our laws, our Constitution, and our most dearly held values. He said, so we are presented with a simple but vital question. Can the government reward or punish American citizens based upon the color of their skin or the ancestry of their families? We all know the answer. Racial discrimination in any form is legally and morally wrong. It is un-American, it is unconscionable, and it must be stopped. A hearing is set for May 24th. Now, as for the Small Business Association, they say it's been successful. The SBA administrator saying in a statement, the numbers show that we've been particularly successful at reaching the smallest restaurants in underserved communities that have struggled to access relief. These businesses are the pillars of our nation's neighborhoods and communities. The group got 147,000 applications from women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged business owners. The requested relief funds totaled $29 billion. Now, let's switch gears and turn to schools. A federal judge is upholding a Biden administration rule barring schools from maintaining separate bathrooms and showers for male and female students. In other words, it is siding with gender-neutral bathrooms and showers. Judge Roseanne Ketchmark rejected a motion seeking a temporary restraining order against a new regulation barring schools from maintaining separate bathrooms and showers. The College of the Ozarks filed a lawsuit. It is a private Christian college established in 1906. As for the regulation, the Department of Housing and Urban Developments, or HUD, came up with a new rule after Biden's executive order. Signed on his first day in office, the order directs all federal agencies to reinterpret Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act to include all individuals' gender identity and sexual orientation when considering sexual discrimination. The order states every person should be treated with respect and dignity and should be able to live without fear, no matter who they are or whom they love. Children should be able to learn without worrying about whether they will be denied access to the restroom, the locker room, or school sports. Following Biden's order, Secretary Marshall Fudge led HUD officials in issuing a directive on February 11th that bans any recipient of federal funds from segregating bathrooms based on gender. This school sued, arguing in their lawsuit that the new regulation interferes with the college's speech, burdening its exercise of its moral and religious principles and intruding upon its students' privacy. The school is now facing a tough choice. Without the emergency relief, the college must get rid of its current housing policies, cease talking to students about its policies, and stop planning for fall semester housing. That's all in violation of its long-standing religious beliefs. Or if the college continues to provide housing based on biological sex, it will suffer massive fines and investigatory burdens. The college is asking the court to allow them to forego the directive in order to maintain its own legal status, as the new rule forces the school to violate its long-held religious beliefs and practices by opening all campus living spaces to male and female students, including dorm bathrooms and showers. The judge, who's an Obama appointee, denied the motion and observed that it was not justiciable. Representing the school is Alliance Defending Freedom. It's an Arizona-based public interest law firm that specializes in religious liberty litigation. Senior counsel Julie Mary Blake told the Epoch Times on May 20th they were disappointed in the court's ruling, but they remain confident the college will prevail in the end. Blake told reporters the day before that the government cannot and should not force schools to open girls' dorms to males based on its politically motivated and inappropriate redefinition of sex. Adding religious schools shouldn't be punished simply because of their beliefs about marriage and biological sex. She went on to say government overreach by the Biden administration continues to victimize women, girls, and people of faith by gutting their legal protections, and it must be stopped. The firm has a track record of being successful, winning 12 Supreme Court cases since 2001. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and have a wonderful weekend.